Good morning. I'm Beth Pomper. I'm Director of International Business Development for the state of Delaware. I want to thank you all for coming on this very interactive session, like Emma had said. Before I get started, I'd like to acknowledge and introduce some of my other colleagues, because unlike a normal Export Delaware program, this program is one that is for the entire Northeast. So it is run by the Eastern Trade Council. It's comprised of the 10 states in the Northeast, from Maine to the north to Delaware to the south. I happen to be the chair this year. That's why you see me and me managing this project with my colleagues. I'd like to acknowledge Laura Jaworski, my colleague from the state of Connecticut, who's on, and Jen Black from the state of Pennsylvania, who's on. I know a lot of you are Pennsylvania companies, and we also have some Connecticut companies joining. We have Dale Foote and Ron Drews from the World Trade Center Greater Philadelphia, I see on, and Dino Ramos from the World Trade Center of Greater Philadelphia as well. So a warm welcome to all of you. And thank everyone this morning for joining. What we'd like to discuss is we do together as the Northeast, and also Pennsylvania separately and Delaware separately, as many of you joining this morning know, we hire and work with professional business consultants in foreign countries. Today, we're very fortunate to have Richard Zurba from Zurcom International and Juan Millan from Cadet International joining us, and they are our in-market experts for the Caribbean, and they will be running our upcoming trade mission, which is really a business trip where business meetings are organized for those companies that are interested and appropriate and are selected to join the program. February 5th through 9th, we will be traveling to Jamaica and the Dominican Republic. We have limited space, so we're not going to be able to accept everyone, but we want to introduce them to you, let them explain a little bit about the opportunities for your product or service in the Caribbean as a whole, and specifically in Jamaica and the Dominican Republic. And we want you to be able to ask questions, okay? You're all from a variety of different sectors. Some of you have products, some of you have services, some of you are in manufacturing, in healthcare, in biotech, in IT, in water treatment. So everyone's all over the board. So we'll start with the general presentation, and then if you would so kindly just raise your hand or put your question in the chat, and I'll call on you and ask you to unmute your microphone so you can ask your question directly. We want to make sure you all get your questions answered. And whether you decide you want to join us on this particular business trip this time or in the future, it's important for us to answer your questions. So the business trip is the 5th to the 9th. We'll be working with you to arrange one-on-one business meetings for you specific to your company, whether it makes sense for you to meet with a distributor, an OEM, a client, or a partner of some sort. Those meetings will be set up for you. Richard and Juan and their teams will organize these meetings with your direct input. We will work with you to identify the targets. We'll identify the targets. We'll ask you to look at those targets and say, yes, this is our priority A, B, or C. And then at that point, we'll present your business to the targets and see who has interest in meeting with you. Okay, so we have cars and drivers that will take you to your appointments. We'll have simultaneous Spanish interpreters to go with you in the Dominican Republic. And we will have your sales presentation translated into Spanish. Okay, and they're all the things that, that we handle for you. Every state handles the costs differently. So I would urge you to speak to your respective state. Jen for Pennsylvania, of course, Laura for Connecticut, myself or Emma for Delaware. If you are from another state, you can, and you don't know who to contact, just reach out to me or to Emma, and we'll make sure you land in the right place with your respective state international trade director. So with that, I will like to introduce Richard Zurba, who'll go first. And of course, Juan will follow. And they are our in-market experts with staff and teams on the ground in the Caribbean that we all will be working with. So Richard, I'll turn it over to you first. Thank you.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to our discussion. I'd just like to flag that Nathan Hamilton, who's from Jamaica, is in the group here. Nathan, are you able to turn on your camera and wave at everybody? Or you can say hello at least.
And I can say hello. Hello, everyone.
Okay,
Hi, Nathan.
perfect.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So great. Nathan is he's been working with us for just more than a year. We have a staff right across the entire region, and I'm going to start sharing my screen now and tell you a bit about the Caribbean region as a whole, and then a bit about Jamaica and things. So as you can hear, I'm actually originally from Canada, if you're picking up my accent, but I've had a deep interest in the Caribbean since I was a kid. I had a pen pal there since I was about 12 years old, and I've been involved with the region ever since. And so it's an area that has always interested me, and I started to think about, well, what are we going to do in the coming during the, let me just see if, okay. I was thinking during the COVID period, there's actually a big need for assistance in the Caribbean. And I called my friend Juan and I said, Juan, you can speak Spanish, and I did grade 9 Spanish when I lived in Montana for a while, but I don't have enough to speak it fluently. And so Juan and I decided to work together, and I would cover the English and French speaking side, and he would cover the Spanish speaking side of the region. So now we have a really good staff of people all across the region, and we've been working with state governments like with Export Delaware and Pennsylvania and other states since then to assist companies who want to get into the market. And we're very excited about the future for the Caribbean, and particularly since the trends that are indicating that the Caribbean really is an excellent, vibrant trading area, and people are under representing this in their own minds. It's actually got a lot more opportunity than most people think. So the first thing I want you to consider is that there's an English-speaking market of about 20 million people right on your doorstep, and it's not Canada. It's actually the Caribbean region, and the CARICOM community, although it does include Haiti, which speaks French, is made up of almost entirely of former British colonies, which are now independent, plus 5 countries that are still dependencies of the United Kingdom. And this is a close-knit common market that has existed for 50 years now. They just had their 50th anniversary. And it is a very distinguished group of countries that have worked hard to create an excellent, small but vibrant trading community there. There's a lot of commonalities inside each of these countries toward each other, but there are some cultural differences, even though they do speak English, and even though it might sound to an American ear that they have similar accents, there are some big differences. If you were to look at Suriname all the way over to Belize, that's actually almost the length of the United States. So geographically, there's a big spread over this region, and there's a lot going on. So just very quickly, there's some commonalities with American trade that you could be familiar with. The first one is the Caribbean Basin Initiative, and this is something that allows most goods from the CARICOM countries to enter duty-free into the United States. And then a bit later, Juan might mention the Dominican Republic, Central America Free Trade Agreement. There's a list of the countries that are involved there, and American goods enter duty-free mostly into these countries. So there are some stipulations to that, of course, but a free trade agreement does go both ways, and so that's very important. But if we look at the important figure, altogether, trade between the CAFTA DR and the U.S. totaled $108.5 billion, and this is in the U.S.'s favor by $8 billion. So America has a very favorable trade surplus in goods and services with the CAFTA DR region, and I'll let that get into, I'll let Juan get into that a little bit more. But just in regional trade, and 2019, I use this year because it wasn't affected by COVID, and 2023 is going to be a much better year because the economy in the Caribbean has taken off very nicely. But we're seeing that there is a lot of American goods that are exported and a lot of goods that are being imported from the region as well, creating a very big goods surplus, particularly for the U.S. And we're going to get into which sectors this is. And this also indicates for Jamaica particularly, that you can see that American trade with the world for Jamaica, if you look at the United States, it's almost half of all the trade that goes back and forth with Jamaica. So Jamaica's got a very good understanding of the American market, and they display that in their trading relationship with the United States, which is very important to them. Now, why is America very trusted, or why does it have that big number fixed to it? It's because, first of all, proximity. It's very close to the Caribbean, but also America represents reliability. It represents trusted brands, product quality. There's a lot of experience working with the Caribbean nations, and this goes back right to independence, and also cultural proximity. You are closer to the Caribbean in mind than you might think. People there are not that much different in terms of their historical antecedents, and a lot of things that America's gone through, the Caribbean's gone through in a little bit different ways. But we see that we've these different English-speaking markets have developed in parallel, and so the Caribbean countries are a bit like America's cousins, and we can see that there's a lot of real important commonalities. Not only the fact that there is a big Caribbean diaspora in the USA. Do we have anybody in the audience here who's from the Caribbean? Nobody's speaking up, but I'll assume just Nathan. But they're very familiar with American brands. There are a lot of really key companies that are focused on importing from the United States. And so when you come in with a product typically from the United States, you have a long history of companies that have gone before you and people that have gone before you and built up that trust, where America is has become predominant, and it is an important aspect of doing trade with Jamaica, particularly the other English speaking countries, but also the Spanish speaking countries. Now, we see one thing that I wanted to bring out at the very beginning is that tourism has soared in the last couple of years, but this year is going to be a record year for tourism right across the Caribbean market. The Caribbean market has come out of COVID in terms of its tourism faster than almost any other market in the world. And so we're seeing that in Jamaica, this is being reflected, but this is being reflected right across the whole of the region. And importantly, because the tourism market is one of the key foreign exchange earners. And when the tourism market does well with its service aspect, with the number of people that it employs, with the way it affects almost everything from logistics to the food services to restaurants and hotels and all of these things. There's a big spin-off, and it means that the market is doing well. So in terms of the value that's being brought in, 2023 is going to be a big, big year. And we're going to see that in terms of the numbers of visitors, it is going to be far up from 2022 from COVID, but even better than the record year, which was set in 2019. And so this is something that is important. Now, the other thing that is not really of key aspect to, I'm just going to get to this, but is a key aspect and a trend that's happening in the Caribbean is that Guyana is presently the fastest growing country in the world with a GDP of around 50% per year. And this is that I didn't say 15, I said 50, 50. And this has been going on for the last 3 years. They've discovered petroleum. They're starting to roll it out. So Guyana is kind of anchoring a lot of the growth that's going on in the southeast of the Caribbean region. And Jamaica is benefiting from that because when one member of the CARICOM benefits, a lot of the other companies from other regions which know the region get involved. And so we see a lot of companies from Trinidad, from Barbados, from Jamaica getting involved in the benefits that are happening down there in Guyana. And this is also the benefits are soon going to be spreading to Suriname. And so Jamaican companies are benefiting from that substantially. And this is also creating a real strength of understanding that Jamaica's positioning as a logistics hub, which it already is for the English-speaking Caribbean, can be further strengthened. And so the government there has been working on that, and successfully so, with airports and with the ports and all the facilities that require transshipping and that sort of thing. So Jamaica is becoming more important as a nexus for the Caribbean. So not everything is going out of the port of Miami. A lot of it is coming into Jamaica and then being transshipped into other countries. So Jamaica is a hub country for the region. It's one of the reasons why we chose Jamaica as a market for American companies. And so when we look at some of the sectors that we'll be touching on just very quickly, we see that digital services from the United States is very important. There are some training that's happening at top quality universities and learning institutions in Jamaica, for example, University of West Indies, but there are not enough to fill the gaps for all the companies that are growing very quickly. And so there are capacity issues, not least because a lot of the young people that get those IT degrees are moving to the US and Canada and other places. So we see that there's a substantial gap between what is needed and what is supplied. And so there is a big need for digital services there, strategic help in digital consulting, cybersecurity, those sorts of things, infrastructure development, construction, always big, particularly ensuring that if you're coming in that sector, that your companies can match the hurricane resilience requirements that are there. Maritime sector development, there's a lot going on with the port facilities, tourism and linkages, everything that goes into the tourism sector all those ancillary sectors are very, very important. And we're talking about a world-class growth there, and where you are in a place where the Caribbean is actually requiring everything from food services to micro infrastructure for hotels and resorts and all of these sorts of things. So when you look at the tourism sector, there's a lot of subsectors there that are incredibly important. Then we have food security, agriculture. Presently, and I'll mention this a bit later, but presently there is obviously a food deficit when you have so many tourists coming in and you live on small islands. Right now, 90% of the food requirements come from outside and predominantly from the USA. Agri-tech, there is a big need for growth there. And really anything that is food and beverage related has a possibility there. So we've been looking and working with a lot of companies there. And then everything that keeps the Caribbean environment pristine, working with the cruise industry, where ships actually have a lot of things going on, and they have remediation problems. So every maritime municipal environment where they're docking needs special requirements. And then you have the Sargassum weed problem that's happened over the last decade, where we see a lot of requirement for harvesting the seaweed. So we've got a lot of things that are happening right across the whole region, and I don't want to limit it too much. But just quickly, Jamaica has not quite 3 million people, a relatively decent standard of living there. And here's just some statistics. I'm not going to quote them all to you, but if you've traveled down there, you'll have been able to spend these dollars. I traveled to Jamaica when it was when there was about, I think it was 10 Jamaican dollars to $1 American, and now it's 150. So they've had worse inflation, but they've got inflation under control. So right now, Jamaica's GDP is fairly strong. It's hovering between 2 and 3% in real terms. Unemployment rate is the lowest level in history, and so they do have a requirement for creating better and better jobs. But this is because they've been able to access a lot of the business process outsourcing and getting young people into those kind of jobs, fulfilling requirements that are maybe needed for other countries, but doing them from Jamaica. And then we see that inflation is coming in hand right now, and it's come down out of some of the COVID disruptions, and we're seeing a relatively good inflation rate, and the Jamaican government's hoping to get it below 5%. And their target rate is between 1 and 5%. A balanced budget, this is a good thing, and we're seeing that Jamaica's government is actually attacking their budget debt and hoping to bring that down in the next couple of years. So overall, they've been bringing down their debt load, which is a significant thing. And then the other thing that's really important for American exporters is that Jamaica has US dollars to pay you back. And importantly, when you're selling things sometimes to another foreign country, there's problems with Reserve Bank authorizations, and Jamaica's got money to pay debtors that need to pay their money overseas back again. So, and this also goes in tune with the tourism industry and other sectors which are doing well, because those international sectors are bringing in money, and it allows the currency to be situated in dollar bank accounts, and allows the free float of the Jamaican dollar. So there's a lot of strength and resiliency in their economy right now. And so they've bounced back out of the COVID period looking very healthy overall. And this is something that is really important. Just quickly, if you don't know Jamaica, it's divided into 3 counties, which would be analogous to American-sized counties, but importantly, you should look at a map and understand where the 14 parishes are, because people will usually tell you where their town is located, and that's going to be in one of these parishes. And it's good to have an understanding of where people are from on the island. And I'd ask you to just study a little map, get to know some of the major towns, because you might be actually traveling to some of them as you get onto the roads there to meet companies. And just quickly, I'm not sure where your company is in this sector list, but these are sectors that we have noted are of good potential, and we don't want to limit it to these sectors, but we do want to let you know that we have been working with a lot of companies that are working in these sectors into this region. And you might say, well, mining a company, yeah, Jamaica's got a very big mining sector in the bauxite sector, which is tied to the aluminum sector. So there's a lot going on aside from tourism and agriculture. Then the other thing to keep in mind, Jamaica's got a relatively younger population than the US. And so they've got a lot of younger families, but their population level is below replacement. So we're going to see a relative decline, and that also is affected by the immigration level to the US and other countries. Sorry. So maybe right now I'll let Juan take over, and then we can have Q&A later. Sorry, my voice just went.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Richard. And I'll turn it over to Juan to talk about the Dominican Republic and the opportunities there.
Okay, thank you. Just give me a second. So, thank you, Beth, Emma, and Jennifer, for organizing this, and Richard for his presentation. He saved me a lot of time because most of the trends are very similar in the region. We share this proximity, cultural, and in business with the two countries. So I will not insist on that. But I will be focusing in Dominican Republic. And in terms of some data, so you can have an idea, it's largely populated, almost 11 million. They share the island with Haiti, which is another 9 million. It's a democracy, and is the capital city is Santo Domingo. And it's highly dense populated with almost 200 people per square kilometer. Some key factors. In terms of GDP, is the number one in Central America and the Caribbean. It's also number two in overall macroeconomic stability. In words of Secretary Blinken, is the country which better performed after COVID. And finally, is number two for the strength of the institution. So it's quite a stable economy to do business with. Looking at the forecast, we see that they got a drop during COVID. I would say milder than the rest of the region, only less than 7%, but a strong recovery and a strong forecast over 5% in the next years. And if we identify the main sectors, it's a service economy. Most of the GDP is formed by services. The importance of tourism is clear, and services, we will go into that. But the main point I want to make is there is a trend, and American companies are reshoring. They are moving their outsourced production from Asia into Central America and Caribbean. So most of the Central American countries are benefiting for that. Salvador, Guatemala, and Dominican Republic and Jamaica are two of them. If you look at the percentage that manufacturing represents, it's increasing 5%, which is 20% of the total. And the trend is that the more and more companies from the United States are going to produce closer. This way, they reduce their footprint, carbon footprint, because the transportation consumes less petrol, but also they reduce the dependence on Asia, which is kind of a strategic decision at the moment. If we break down the imports, you can see the main partner is the United States, is the country which exports the most into the Dominican Republic, followed by China. We will see that in terms of competition, United States and specifically the East Coast is in a very well position to access this market, which gives American companies based in the East Coast a competitive advantage that they should take advantage. And in terms of what the Dominican Republic exports into the United States, of course, it's gold. There is a massive mine. It also ferro and other minerals. But I want to make a point about medical instruments because I know some of the companies are from that sector, and that comes from a reason, and it's called free trade zones. So right now, 5 out of the 10 largest pharma and medical equipment companies got a production facility in the Dominican Republic, and they are based in these free trade zones. The reason, they have duty-free geographic areas, they have 84, and it's not only medical equipment, they have over 700 multinational companies based there. You can see most of the companies are familiar for you and your, potentially most of them are customers already. So that gives you a competitive advantage. If you are already providing services or selling to Baxter or to Eaton, it would be easier for you to expand that sales into the facilities in the Dominican Republic. So main sector is medical devices, similar to the case of Costa Rica. It's impressive what is happening, but I would say footwear and textiles are also taking over as the most growing sectors. So some key facts, as I mentioned, 5 of the top global medical device manufacturers are there. Tourism is the leading industry. Everybody knows or have heard about Dominican Republic as a destination. Richard already shared with us the numbers. They are incredible. And it brings also investment for construction. So if you're in the construction, just last year, the government approved projects for over $500 million for 18 projects. So they're going to be developing new tourism facilities in La Romana, around the island. So that gives you a lot of opportunity to sell your product or services. Also, Dominican Republic, the government decided to become a logistic hub. So they passed the Act 262-15, which in combination with the free zone area, will help the companies to sell into Dominican Republic to re-export to the rest of the Caribbean and Central America. So the idea is positioning Dominican Republic as a logistic hub. As per technology, the same as Jamaica, the idea is promoting BPO services for lower cost. They have, and we will see that later, they have specific programs and big demand for educational services in order to promote the BPO to serves the rest of the United States. So it's driving a big demand for education. Last year, Richard and I ran a trade delegation, and I can tell you there was a massive interest for local companies to improve their educational level, mostly in English and IT. Normally, when you talk about Dominican Republic, Jamaica, or Central America, people tend to be, well, it's unsafe. Well, if you look at the figures, it's not unsafe. You just need to avoid some specific neighborhoods, and I would say it's quite safe, and that would be my experience, and so no problem with that. In case you decide to invest, you will have the support not only of the U.S. Trade Commercial Services, but also the government just got this agency to help you. And as Richard mentioned, the business relationships are covered by the CAFTA-DR free trade agreement, which helps you not only in terms of trade, but also in terms of investment. And there are so many reasons to invest in the Dominican Republic, but in any case, the fact that they've got the second largest population in the Caribbean, just after Cuba, which is out of business at the moment, with a young population, gives you what we call the demographic bonus. So we can foresee not only an actual and current demand, but future demand, because these young people are getting older and with increased purchasing power. And we chose this map so you can see how Dominican Republic is with Jamaica, both of them are in a perfect location to access from the East Coast. Like if you were in Seattle, I wouldn't say to come to Dominican Republic probably, but from the East Coast is so close. And what we have is number one, in the case of Dominican Republic, number one transportation infrastructure in the whole Latin region. That is because there are 9 international airports and 12 seaports, and they already have 22,000 kilometers of highways and roads. To be perfectly honest, not all of them are in perfect state. Like moving around the island is not that simple, but as Beth mentioned, you will be having the support of a local driver, so it's not a problem, but it takes some time. Moving around the island takes some time. And the main thing is how close it is, only 3 days by sea or 2 hours by plane to the United States. And how to do business, some tips, like then I prefer to answer in the Q&A, but some tips that are shared by all the business. So the importance of the Spanish language as a business tool is clear, but there's this big diaspora, mostly in the East Coast of Dominicans in a lot of states. So that's also an opportunity for Hispanic business to access. Richard mentioned some diaspora opportunities. I think it's a real one. Our recommendation is to count on a local partner to ease the market entry. It's an island. Every island is islanders got their specific mindset, and it's always good to have a local partner. But our strong recommendation is to have legal advice before closing any deal, because as an island, they will protect the local partner. So it's better to get this legal advice in advance. And last but not least, to get used to the Caribbean rhythm. Things takes time. It's Caribbean. It's not probably New York. So it's important to understand that they have their time and their path. So you have to, if you want to sell to them, you have to adapt. And our recommendation is go, learn, and adapt. And then it's very likely that you will do business because, as Richard mentioned at the beginning, American products and services are extremely well valued. So you've got a competitive advantage just for that. So I think with that, it's been quite to the point. And in case any company got any question, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Juan, and thank you, Richard. It was very, very informative. I just want to say before we start with the Q&A, the reason that all of us in the Northeast selected this as an opportunity for all of you is, yes, they are island nations, and yes, they're not probably going to be, your top largest volume in international sales because of their size. However, what they offer are good, consistent, regular business and sales. Many of you in Delaware who've worked with me know I came from private industry. They are just regular business. I personally, would do 1 container every 2 weeks to the Caribbean regularly. So given our proximity, the ease of doing business, what's happening in the world right now is, it's a good, safe, consistent market for you all to consider. So with that, let's take some questions. If you want to just, raise your hand or put your question in the chat and then unmute yourself, I'll call on everybody one at a time. You must have questions for Richard and Juan, how your specific product might do in the Caribbean. Who has a question from the audience? I can't believe nobody has a question.
I do, Beth.
Ivana, yes.
Thank you both for the presentation. And Richard, our company and what we do. We worked together last year in the different trade mission. But so my question is really to understand what our company offers are solutions. It's equipment and reagents to test water and soil for toxicity. And it's a quick monitoring tool. And, and there are countries, Europe specifically, they have it legislated. The technology has been known there, for many decades. Other places around the world, not so much. And I just, because that could be used in oil and gas industry, in mining, and, and drinking water facilities, wastewater facilities, industrial water, universities for research. So how is this as far as government focus on monitoring water, making sure that it's safe, and legislation and things like this? If maybe you have any sort of insights that you could share.
I think the first thing is that the Caribbean market, in some ways, honestly, it has suffered from a lack of enforcement, but that has created a problem, which has created opportunities for companies like yours. Now, their wish is that they can create pristine environments for their visitors, and that is a key thing. But there are locations that you would think of as being a beautiful place, which might be highly polluted. And this is an issue that resorts deal with. This is an issue that municipalities deal with. There's a lot of also there's issues that governments are facing with the increase in the quality and standard of living, where people are demanding better water facilities, better services, where soils are now being remediated from previously dangerous levels. And so I think that I really think that your company could do well, given the given some of the breadth of opportunity in the region. So maybe Juan, if you want to talk about water and soil, I really, and the other thing is, when you have a small island, often there aren't a lot of places to hide the rubbish. There aren't a lot of places to put the toxic things. And this is a problem. So there are a lot of hidden dangers in these places that need to be fixed.
In the case of Dominican Republic, we collaborated with the Dutch government back in 2020. It was a project funded by IDB, and they've already created a cabinet within the government to foresee and define the strategies for water. It's a critical issue in an island, as Richard mentioned. The new plan, the hydrologic plan, PHA in Spanish, just started 2020 this year. So it's a matter of critical importance for the local current government.
Sure, thank you. Because that's what we see, that really the biggest, success, I guess, we have in places where it comes from top down, from the government, because the companies don't want to do it if it's not, required, not mandated. Why spend money? If we can kind of get away with it, that we are polluting the environment. But if government, gets involved then, and they see it as a value, then we see how much different it is, and truly the community actually wins on this one. So okay, thank you, really appreciate it.
Thank you. What about another question from one of our Pennsylvania or Connecticut companies to give everyone a turn this morning? Does anyone have a question? Let's see.
I'll ask a
Dean?
question.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
My name's Lynn Conaway with the John R. Wald Company in Central PA. We deal mostly with government entities in the transportation sector, supplying equipment and finished vehicle license plates. So I guess my question is, as part of this trade mission, will we be able to get in front of the government entities that are responsible for the management of those types of things? Registration documents, license plates, all of those things that go with that transportation sector.
Like I can answer from last year experience. Like we cannot promise to manage the agenda of a politician. It's not in our hands. But based on the experience from last year that we ran a similar trade delegation from other states, we were able to organize meetings with the decision makers. In this case, it was logistics. But yes, we have access to these type of contacts, at least in Dominican Republic.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Because I think that one of the things that we do here in the States, and no, it's not a myth, license plates are made in prison throughout the states of the US. One of the things that we have an eye toward is providing training and rehabilitation efforts inside of the prison to make license plates for the government. So we could do this both ways. And I guess as we continue to consider this trade mission, I can be a bit more detailed on my request for who we would like to get in front of.
Mhm.
Yeah, Lynn, what we would do is we would have for anyone that is interested, we would organize, a brief Zoom meeting like this, just with your company privately and Juan and Richard and their staff, just to go into more about what you're looking for, to see then if, define the scope of work and see what could be done.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Yes.
I'd love to go to Jamaica and the Dominican Republic to hang out, but if my company's paying for it, I think I better
That's
do
right.
something
No,
productive.
we tell you too. I mean, honestly, we're straight with people. If it's not the right market, we say this isn't the right market, maybe, another one.
Sure, sure.
And you
I
would
appreciate
work
that.
with Jen and her team to select another one that would meet your needs.
Great.
Absolutely. Like if we don't
Yes,
see any
and
potential. Just oh, sorry, go Richard.
go ahead, Juan.
No, just I'm gonna say that going into these markets under the umbrella of a trade delegation organized by the East Council will give you more power, more weight to access this type of contacts. Like last year, we were able to meet with the Vice Minister of Trade and the head of the port authorities just because we were part of this trade delegation official from the States. If you try to do it by yourself, they just probably ignore you. But
Right.
given this framework, it's normally useful.
Yeah.
It does
And
help.
I would,
Governments are the same all over the world, right? The grass isn't greener, it's just different grass,
Mm.
right? If you go in,
I
with
would-
the delegation, go ahead, Richard.
yeah, and I would add for your company there that there's going to be interest at the governmental technical level. Like Juan said, the politicians are all over the place, but the people that are actually in charge of the nuts and bolts of running a licensing program should be interested in talking to you. You're one of the global best in what you do. Nathan, do you have any comments on that relating to getting meetings with Jamaican government people?
In regards to that, it is possible to get meetings with the Jamaican government, but it all depends on their time schedule and how it is that we can organize it. And it's best when dealing with the Jamaican government is going through the permanent secretary. They are like the person in charge that the government, the minister, work closely with because they're civil servants and they are. and they report directly to the minister, which the minister can change at any given time. So the permanent secretary in each ministry is the best person to contact when in regards to meetings.
Right.
Yes,
So
thank-
we would
thank
have
you.
a strategy in terms of who to approach within your specific requirement and try to get as close to the decision-making apparatus as possible so that you know, quite often, you know, it's not just one person who's going to be making decisions, but you'd have to almost network a little bit. And we understand that you would go in with one objective to meet with different people inside the government, so you can kind of get a 3D view of that, of how that context works together. And it might be that you get 4 different people meeting with you, or 3 different ones from different places, and then maybe some people that work peripherally in that sector. But we, you know, it helps to work to get that that together. And then when they start discussing together, they're talking about having met the same person. You know, that's, I think that that's how we want to formulate your visit there, Lynn.
Okay, I appreciate the feedback.
Sure. What about, do we have a question from a Connecticut company?
Hi, Beth, it's Laura.
Hi.
My company, I don't believe is on the call, so I'm, very much looking forward to taking this information back to them, along with that great takeaway of yours. This is consistent, regular sales, and thanks to Richard and Juan for a very informative presentation. My Connecticut company is involved in ceramic coatings, and there's a lot of industries that this is applicable to besides boats and auto. It extends beyond that. I guess 2 questions. First, I want to verify that there's still the opportunity to do one or the other of the markets if you don't necessarily do both. Thank you for confirming. And then, what is the timeline for a company's final decision for participation?
Well, we've got Christmas
you.
and the holidays in the middle, and we'd like to have time to do a good job. And to do a good job and deliver a top quality agenda takes time. Richard and Juan, I don't want to speak for you, but I would say that our time frame is probably Thanksgiving at the latest on our end, which is November 23rd.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Beth.
Does that work, Richard and Juan?
Yeah, just in practical terms, yes, because we would like some time to be able to do our own on-the-ground investigation or the requirements. And then as the new year comes through, we're going to have to hit the ground running, setting the appointments. So we want to make sure that we've had time before the holidays to enable our research to happen. Juan?
Absolutely, the earlier the better, because don't forget January is holiday time. There is kind of summer for them, so it is not practical for arranging meetings or pre-meetings. So if we can start the groundwork in December, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'll let my companies know.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Do any of you have any other questions that you'd like?
Hey, Beth. Hi,
Steven,
I was
yes.
hoping to get one quick one in before we,
Please.
I'm not sure before we end.
Please.
So my company, Miles Scientific, we manufacture consumable lab supplies, and we have dealt with the University of Jamaica pretty regularly. They place one large order kind of restocking for, I think it's for teaching their labs maybe in the school. But what piqued my interest was when Juan mentioned that in the Dominican Republic, you have quite a few represented pharma companies, and that's 30% of our business is pharma. So what I'm wondering is, since you mentioned that it's beneficial to have maybe a partner, that if I went on this trip, maybe that's what I would be looking for, possibly a partner, a local partner to work with?
Normally, I'd recommend to do that, but sometimes if you are already selling to that company in the United States, you can actually extend the sales internally, like getting referrals, like they will validate you and you will still have to contact them in Dominican Republic and convince them to be this chosen supplier, but eventually you can do it directly. But as a regular, I would say going with a local partner is always beneficial. But exceptionally, if you are already selling to the same company in the States, you might go directly.
Well, unfortunately, 20 years ago, our model was that we sold directly to these pharma companies. Now we're probably at 75% of our business is through our distributors. And most of our pharma business comes through the distributors. So I guess what I might be looking for is a distributor or local rep that, that deals with these pharma companies.
I think that's wise.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody today for joining. If any of you would like to discuss further, if any of you have interest in us organizing a private meeting, Zoom meeting for you with Richard and Juan, please, you can reach out to Laura Jaworski if you're for Connecticut, Jen Black for Pennsylvania, or any of the group here from the World Trade Center if you're a Greater Philadelphia company. If you're Delaware, of course, you let Emma or I know. And if you're not sure where you land and you want to make it easy for those that may be joining from other states in the Northeast, you can contact me or Emma, and we will make sure you are in the right hands. My contact details are beth.pomper, Pomper, @delaware.gov. And we'll get back to you straight away. So I want to thank everyone for your time. Emma has graciously agreed to send everyone the slides from this morning's presentation. And again, if this isn't right for you at this time, we wanted just to provide you with the opportunity to consider in the future. So with that, I'll let all of you go. And Lynn, you had a question?
Yeah, quick question. How do we access the link to this recording if we want to show it to others in our company?
Emma?
And yeah, I will post the recording later this afternoon. It just takes a couple minutes to process, and then I'll send you the link to share with people. It'll be on YouTube.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Okay. Richard and Juan, thank you so much for taking the time. I know it's very late where you are, and we're very, very grateful for you to take the time to talk to each and every one of us today. And for all of you that are joining, we appreciate your participation. Every state handles this differently. So some states are offering travel assistance and a travel stipend to help you with the costs. And like Laura mentioned, you can choose to go on the trip to Jamaica or the Dominican, either or both. And if you're not sure, we first want to make sure and offer you the opportunity to have a further discussion with us. And then we'll advise where we think you'll have the most success, because we are all judged by sales and your success. So we don't want to waste anybody's time. Okay? So thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
You too.
you.
Bye now.
Bye.